Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Being Spiritual with me, your host, Ashley Robinson, live on Spiritual Psychics TV, being broadcast on YouTube and Facebook. Welcome to the show this evening, 23rd of April, St. George's Day, also my wedding anniversary. Happy 16th wedding anniversary to Claire, my beautiful wife. We've been friends now for just over 20 years. And it's been a lovely day in the sunshine. I hope you're all doing well, sending you all some love, light, and laughter as we approach a promising set of conditions for a pathway out of lockdown in the UK. Also, a welcome to our guests joining us from other parts of the world. Do let us know where you're watching this show from, and if it is your first time joining us, a special warm welcome to you. We'll try and do some name checks in a moment. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, this is a participant and led and engagement show. So we do like to see your comments. We do like to engage with you. In order to do that, do make sure you've logged on to your YouTube account and then look for that live chat function. Before you do that, remember to share the stream with your friends and remember to give us a thumbs up and like. And of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to Spiritual Psychics TV. Make sure you don't miss any of the wonderful content that's going out live. And for those of you that are joined on Facebook, really easy to share this stream. So please do consider doing that. Let your friends know that you're watching Being Spiritual with Ashley Robinson this evening. This is a spiritualist philosophy sort of show. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the concept of reincarnation. And we'll be following on from a few of the bits and pieces that we've already discussed on this subject. So there are no live spiritualist mediumship tonight. That will be tomorrow night from 8 p.m. But this evening, we're going to be talking about everything spiritual, particularly my own spiritualist beliefs and philosophy, and opportunity to answer any of your questions. So ask Ash anything. You're very welcome to do so, particularly around reincarnation this evening. And if you do want to follow me on my page, you can find me on Instagram, on Facebook at Ash Robinson Medium. But while you're looking for those pages, do try and bookmark all of the Spiritual Psychics TV pages. You'll find us across all of the popular social media channels. And of course, subscribe to make sure you don't miss any of this content. Well, thank you, Richard James, our wonderful producer that's put forward this show and given us this opportunity to do what we're doing tonight, all the fantastic stuff that's going on. I'm now going to do a couple of hellos and welcomes to those of you on the Facebook and YouTube hyperspace. And as I say, a special welcome to any new viewers. So Gail Amos says, evening, everybody. Hiya, Gail. My good friend Kim Bryan. Hiya. Welcome, Kim. Lauren says, hiya. Right back at you, Lauren. Good to have you tonight. Joanne Lewis. Hiya. Han B, watching from Phoenix, Arizona. Watch this regularly. Love it. Good to have you. Kaylee Bryan, Kim's daughter. Hiya, Kaylee. Best wishes to you and the little one. Stay sure. Don't tell them, actually. They'll ask you what you had for dinner. If you're really interested in what I've had for dinner, I can tell you that. It was nothing. I usually eat after the show. Good evening, Stace. Hi, Kelly McKeaton. Big love to you too, Kelly. Casey Tanner says, hi, evening. Evening, everybody. Hiya, Casey. Christine Davis, good evening to you too. Mary Dixie, good evening. For those that don't know, Mary was one of my circle leaders. Hiya, Sue Carroll. Catherine Coppin, evening all. Yeah, good evening to you, Catherine. Julie Caswell always comes up with some good and difficult questions. Hiya, Julie. Lovely Alison Barton. Hiya, Alison. Great. And welcome to any of the first-time viewers this evening. I say Spiritualist Mediumship tomorrow night from 8 p.m. and often midweek, so do subscribe to the channel. Tonight we're talking about spiritualist philosophy, and we're going to be continuing with the theme of reincarnation. Now, I think there was one or two of you that are joining us for the first time, but I was going to give a quick summary. Hiya, Mark. Give you a quick summary of where we sort of got to around the concept of reincarnation and karma. And then we're going to follow that conversation forward a little bit more today. We're going to talk about perhaps some potential stages of reincarnation and some of those common threads. But if you're on Facebook, make sure that you write onto the wall any of your specific comments. If I see them pop up this evening as we're talking, I'll try and answer them. Otherwise, towards the end of the night, probably in about half an hour's time, I'll be encouraging you to ask as many questions as you like. So, where were we then on reincarnation? Hiya, Teresa, first time. Well, I'm going to give a summary. Okay, well, there's a few Facebook hellos I'll say hello to. Tara Angels, hiya, Tara. Hazel Thompson, newbie from Scotland. Welcome, Hazel. Beautiful name, my nan's name. That Dawn B. Hi, Ashley. Dawn here. Somerset. Lovely. Hiya, Dawn. Pat Bear, first time here as well. Hiya, Pat. Welcome. Deborah Mason. This is my first time here as well from Dundee, Scotland. Hiya, Deborah. Nat Nat. Good evening to you, Nat Nat. Lisa Marie. Hi from London. Hiya. I'm based in South London myself, near Wimbledon. Hiya, Sylvia Freestone. Good evening. Looking forward to the show. Thank you, Sylvia. Latoya, sending you some condolences, and do check out the mediumship shows as they come on. Natalie Bentley says, good evening. Hiya, Natalie. Hey, Tony. Good evening, sir. Welcome. Julie Doherty, good evening to you too. St George's head rest for the dog. Fantastic. Yvonne Jackson, good evening to you too. And Jade, hi there. Hoping to hear something from him. You'll only be hearing from me tonight, Jade. So mediumship Saturday nights. Grace says evening and hi. Hiya, Grace. Nana Apple. Amy White, hello to you. Slater Paul, good evening. Hey, Slater. Natasha, good evening to you. Diane Burston, good evening. Hiya. Hiya, Karen. Welcome to you. Is that Petty Piece? Alison Barton, no readings tonight. Yep. Thanks, Alison. Good side post. Jamie Skinner, my mum's birthday. Well, happy birthday to her, Jamie. Mina Carr, happy anniversary. Thank you, Mina. Very much appreciated. Lovely to have you on the show tonight. Ray Robinson, that's a familiar name. Is he a regular troll, Richard, or do I know him for another reason? Hiya, Dad. Hiya, Mum. And thanks for your help today, picking up the boys, giving Claire and I an opportunity to get out this afternoon. G'day, Ashley, from Richard, 5 a.m. here in Melbourne, Australia. Wendy, I don't know if you've had a difficult day and it's the end of the night or a very early morning, but welcome to you. Nicole joins us from the USA as well. Is it Arcanus? Hiya, Nicole. And Georgina Williams. Hiya. Karen, she's a newbie from sunny Brixham in Devon. Okay. Hi, Karen. Lovely to have so many new people joining us tonight. Tina from Bristol. Hiya, Tina. Hey, Christine. Lovely. I think I've managed to name check most of you, but if I haven't, I apologize. Sheree Dyer from Australia. Hiya, Sheree. Then a special welcome to all of you if I haven't mentioned, but lovely to have you. My good friend, Jade Marie. Off topic, but happy anniversary. Thanks a lot, Jade Marie. It's very nice of you to say so. Love to you and George. Lorraine Smith, another newbie as well. Hiya, Lorraine. Okay, so I'll hopefully you'll see the rest of the comments. Hi, Sarah. If I do see other names pop up, we'll try and mention you as well. But welcome to the show. So, Being Spiritual, this is a spiritualist philosophy show. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the concept of reincarnation. And I appreciate a number of you are first time viewing this show. Do check out the archives. You'll see a playlist on YouTube and also on Facebook. We've spoke about reincarnation, and we've also spoke about karma as concepts. And if you've not watched those shows, it might be good as a foundation to go back. But for those of you that were there, I sort of remind you by sort of way of summary. I gave a little story about a group of people in search of paradise, the land of honey, and this idea of them kind of starting at one point on the map together and finishing in paradise, and every day on that journey perhaps representing a different light, a different life with different experiences. And the idea being that how you get from the start of this map to the end. Thank you, Christine, for wishing us happy anniversary. How you get from the start to the end is up to you because you have this wonderful gift of free will. We started to explore on the show dedicated to karma that concept of being in charge to a certain extent of your destiny, perhaps being able to choose to incarnate and choosing when and how you may incarnate. And of course, doing that perhaps in pursuit of happiness, in pursuit of experiencing everything. And then there was this idea about getting to a point of your life where you felt you perhaps had a bit too much negative karma. And there were things you were looking to neutralize in terms of energy as part of your overall progression. So that is sort of it in a nutshell. And again, for those that are joining us for the first time, I do believe that reincarnation is possible. I don't think that everyone does reincarnate. I do personally believe that a lot of us choose to. I think that some people can do it several times, perhaps even hundreds or thousands of times. Other people might do it once or twice and experience it. People may do it for personal reasons because being on earth inside a body, experiencing things in that third dimension are only possible as a human being on earth as opposed to the spirit world. And there are other reasons why people might reincarnate, including to help others or because you enjoy the company. We spoke about the concepts of soul groups and soul contracts, where you might decide to reincarnate to be there for someone else in support. I think I spoke about the fact that if that map towards paradise was Disneyland and you really enjoyed a certain ride or a certain attraction in Disneyland, and you had the opportunity to come back and do it again, but in a different body, why wouldn't you? Perhaps you would. We also spoke about the concept that if it was purely just about experiencing everything, just imagine how many choices there could be, assuming that you are the architect of that next incarnation. And of course, my caveat being that I personally believe that the most important reason to talk about reincarnation is to dedicate your focus to this life. You only get to live this life once, and you live it every single day. So you should dedicate that life to one of pursuits of happiness, doing things that make you happy, with people that make you happy, hopefully being surrounded by unconditional love in both a sort of sending and receiving. Alison has said, can we send Cherise some healing for her father-in-law who's in hospital and she lost a puppy last night? Of course, Alison, and thank you for mentioning Cherie. We'll make sure we send all of that energy towards the end of the show to everybody. But yeah, definitely sending it to Cherie now. So that was a sort of basic summary of my own personal opinions. I've also mentioned several times that assuming that reincarnation is possible, we actually arrive in this life, in this incarnation, almost always with no memory of previous lives at all. So, what's the point of them? If we start this life without any of that prior knowledge, why do we keep doing it again? And I've mentioned the fact that in that place I call heaven, the spirit world, your higher self, you have perhaps an opportunity to see and remember all of those various lives. But one of the really important things that I sort of want to plant a seed before I get into the stages is something I've said a few times about being a spiritual medium. And for those that don't know, I'm a spiritual medium. And as a spiritual medium, I believe one of my primary jobs is to give evidence of life after that change we call death. And by evidence, I mean evidence of a personality. Because the difference between a human being and a corpse, I've often said, is the personality. Some of you might call that the soul, the spirit, or the consciousness. But a human being is becomes a corpse absent of that personality. I believe that personality, being energy, lives in that place I call heaven, that transitional place. Some call it the fourth dimension or limbo, heaven, the spirit world. And actually, it's the evidence of that personality which communicates. And as a spiritualist medium, you have to ask yourself, well, how long does the evidence of that personality stay with that spirit? Because if that spirit is experiencing multiple personalities, at what point do they start giving messages? And it starts to become complicated. And in the most simple terms that I've received from my guides, when I'm giving evidence of someone's life after the life they've had as a human being in their body, that personality was the last fusion that consciousness had on Earth. And therefore, that personality is what's true. The other thing is that because that personality is quite recent, when you're giving a message to someone, you're often saying, well, I've got someone here who claims to know you. And this, as a medium, for me, is a really important difference as a spiritualist medium, is you are challenging who the message is from. You're giving them a communicator. And if someone knows their communicator, it means that that person lived very recently. I mean, you might sometimes get great grandparents, but anything above great grandparents, the chances are you're not going to go, yeah, great 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 grandmother. You might know of them, but actually, mediumship in that sense, is it as important about the now? Perhaps it is. And of course, if they are in that place I call heaven, they're able to give us some guidance. But then we start to get into that world of guides and inspirers, ancestors. Some talk about the sense of ascended masters. We had Ashley Mills on the show not so long ago. We were talking about the realm of unicorns and Pegasus. We've also spoke about the fairy realm and everything kind of in between. For me, all of that is different vibrations of energy. And as a medium, as a human being and a medium, I am the person in between that energy, which is otherwise vibrating at a level we're unable to pick up with our human senses predominantly, and we're passing on that message. So I wanted to plant those seeds. And of course, I welcome anyone to challenge me on that or challenge the status quo. This is my personal opinion based on the things that have been said to me. Now, Tony said there, I've heard that the spirit world is just like the human world. Well, Tony, I think it could be. I believe that heaven is absolutely anything we need it to be. Now, understanding that you cannot totally destroy energy, you can only convert it. If it's our personality that survives after that change our body goes through that we call death, then what is the spirit world? Well, it's a world where that personality exists. So I believe heaven is, put simply, a place of pure thought, a place of pure energy. And all of that energy comes together, all of that pure thought creates that spirit world. So, good question, Tony. Right, so moving us on then to the stages. And as I said, folks, do throw any questions as things come in. Certainly by about 8:30, so the next 10, 15 minutes, 8:45, I'd really like to spend some time answering your questions and also hearing your opinions. So, we've said that reincarnation exists. Well, how many times do people do it? Why do we do it? All of these are good questions, and we've explored some of that in karma. But Gal's actually just asked a question, so let me answer that. If you truly meet your soulmate in this life and you are prematurely separated, do you wait in heaven until your partner joins and then reincarnate together, or will they come back to the earth in another body? Gal, I think that all of that is possible. Most of the evidence I've given as a spiritualist medium is that our loved ones, our friends, our family, our parents, brothers and sisters, partners, etc., certainly go to heaven and they create a place for us. They wait for us. They receive us. And then there are opportunities to perhaps reincarnate together. There are some wonderful Hollywood sort of interpretations of this, where if people die really prematurely, they are so desperate to have a 3D connection with that person that perhaps they go and reincarnate immediately. But of course, with that memory blanked out, it's almost impossible for them to remember exactly what that person is and where they're living. And of course, unless you had true choice in where you were born to, there's going to be age differences and all sorts. But in general terms, as a medium, I've had lots of evidence from people that have died where they wait for their partner to join them in that place I call heaven. So moving on from that, then thinking about stages and thinking about that journey, we've spoke about that journey, that map you might be given at the start, this journey back to the promised land, the land of milk and honey. Well, each of us is an absolutely unique and wonderful individual. When we spoke about karma, we spoke about Newman, the new human that perhaps chooses to experience certain things and picks a life, or certainly a baby and a conception, where they hope they're going to experience those things. So we all choose these separate paths using our own free will. And we all have lessons to learn. And I believe that for the vast majority of us, we have the same lessons and the same experiences to learn on Earth in that third dimension, in that 3D world. But in the order in which we experience these things is entirely up to us and is entirely unique to the individual. It's as if we've all been given the same map from A to Z. But how we get from A to Z and when we get from A to Z is entirely up to us. This is why I believe it's totally impossible to compare yourself with anyone else. And a lot of my teachings come from my own relationship with my guides, as well as my circle leaders, conversations with other spiritualists. And a lot of the things I'll be quoting today will be from a good friend of mine who I mentioned this once, Mr. Ralph A. Steadman, who now lives in that place I call heaven. Had some wonderful conversations with him on almost anything spiritual. But reincarnation was a fascinating subject that we used to talk about quite a lot. And one of his books, which is a practical spiritual primer, is a book I go to often, and it's sort of like an A to Z of spiritualism. But I remember the first time as I started to understand the kind of the reasons that people might reincarnate, and he took me through a sort of a generic way of understanding the potential of reincarnation in 4 major stages, which could equal 4 incarnations. Stages could represent hundreds or even thousands of lives. So for those 4 stages could be anything from you do it once, right, to you do it at least 4 times, to you do it 400 times or sort of 4,000 times. But he always said to me, don't compare yourself to anyone else. In the same way your fingerprint's unique, your personality, your consciousness is absolutely unique to yourself. Now, some of us, even if we'd started on that journey at the same time, will probably be in totally different places. And I do believe that we don't all start the journey at the same time. I think some of us are incarnating on Earth for the first time as a human being, even now on the 23rd of April 2021. For other people, they're perhaps reincarnating. And for others, they will continue to do so. But you might find yourself either many, many lives ahead of someone, or indeed many, many lives behind someone. And actually, you don't necessarily get to say, by way of tally charts, this is what I believe, that's by of doing more lives and therefore more experiences, you're necessarily more evolved. I don't think it necessarily works like that either. It goes back to my Disneyland concept. If you got to the first roller coaster and you loved it so much, you just repeated that roller coaster 10 times, you never got to experience the rest of Disneyland. It doesn't necessarily make you any wiser at all. Of course, it could do. So, regardless of that fact, all human beings do go through some stages based on the concept of reincarnation. I believe that all human beings do go through these 4 common stages. Now, Catherine says she believes in reincarnation. We can't have everything in one life. Think constant growth of soul experience. Yeah, absolutely, Catherine. Continuous improvement. So the first stage then of this journey, let's call it the first incarnation as a new human being. I believe that this first stage, this first square on the map, represents the very start of our journey. This opportunity where everything is possible and you're planning to experience as much as possible, often in this wonderful pursuit of happiness, experiencing love, unconditional love, the most powerful thing you've been told to experience on earth. Now, when we start this journey, we can hurry straight into it and try and get through it as quickly as we can. Or we can take our time and take the scenic route and dill-dally along the way. We might decide that we're going to stick to the main roads. Or we might decide that we're going to wander off and explore the smaller roads and the smaller paths. Perhaps we're going to continue to walk or jump on a train. Perhaps we're going to look for fast tracks, see that where we want to get to is the other side of that mountain. And we spoke about the concept of everything we need, we have in order for that experience. Because, of course, we have complete freedom of choice and an honest held belief where we make our own decisions and our own free will. So when we first start that life as Newman, the new human being, when we first come into that incarnation, we're faced with this new, totally new set of conditions. Because I believe that heaven, the spirit world, is kind of where we start. So we start in heaven, we come down to earth. And the reason I say down is because I believe it's a lower level of vibrations or a different frequency in terms of energy. So I always talk about heaven as if it's up, and I talk about being here as lower. But we come from heaven down to here, and we incarnate as a human being. We suddenly have these new experiences, things we've never been able to do without a physical body, new sensations, new talents, new strengths, new skills, and new abilities. We can do absolutely anything that we want to do when we want to do it. Sounds a little bit like a sport child, doesn't it? Nothing is going to hold us back in this journey in pursuit of happiness. It doesn't matter about anyone or anything. We at that point potentially even have no moral or ethnic background at all. What we're experiencing is for that first time. So, what's going to influence us as a child, as a baby? We're going to be the product of our upbringing, where we were born. Perhaps we have chose where to be born, who to be born to. Perhaps we have an idea about the journey that our parents was already going to be in. Perhaps we ended up in exactly the right place we wanted to be, minus that memory. Perhaps we end up in somewhere totally new. Now, Lenny says, learning not to compare yourself to anyone is the most empowering and the greatest gift you can give yourself. True that, Lenny. Thank you very much for your thoughts as well. Good confirmation. So there you are, you're Newman. You're experiencing everything, hopefully having a wonderful time. I imagine if I was choosing the life of a human being for the very first time, I've tried to imagine what that is, and I can't because I just don't have that memory of heaven. So I always think about it as a blockbuster video store. Now, for some of our viewers that are younger than me, you might have no idea what I'm talking about. Hopefully, a few of you do. This idea we could go in and rent a VHS tape or a DVD and kind of watch a film, and you'd look through the headlines. For me, perhaps choosing an incarnation is a little bit like that blockbuster video store. And you walk in and you think, oh, do I want a romance or an action or a thriller? Hopefully, probably not a horror. And you choose a life and you're looking at the highlights and you think, well, that looks good. That part of the world looks nice, not too warm, not too cold. That family, not too rich, not too poor. Looks like I'm going to have a nice, healthy birth and everything I'm going to need. Perhaps that first life is very much around the things you want to experience. Now, Mark says, do you believe that previous life regression can work, or can it be a state of meditation that encourages imagination? Oh, good question, Mark. I think that past life regression is possible. In fact, I've been through something where I believe I've been able to regress back to the states of previous lives. There's a lovely lady that works on Spiritual Psychics TV called Kirsty Grogan that has the ability to be able to do this. Ivan Lee's another person that I've personally been regressed by. And I do think that it is possible. But I think there's a really good thing you raised there about this state of meditation that encourages imagination. What is imagination? And is there still such thing as a first thought or a first belief? I've often mentioned sometimes in jest on this show that almost everything in Hollywood perhaps has a seed of a previous life or something that someone's already seen in the future. So yes, I do believe that past life regression can work, but I also do think that all the different lives of people that have lived, plus all the things that thrive in our imagination, could be possible. So I see another couple of questions come in. I'm just going to move us on to the second stage, and then I'll take a question here from Nicola. So the second stage, that's our first stage. Newman, blockbuster video, choose the life I want, choose the experiences I want. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to experience unconditional love. I'm going to give love unconditionally. I'm going to receive love unconditionally, and I'm going to have a jolly great time. Well, we spoke about starting your journey, didn't we, when we spoke about the map, and we spoke about the end of your first day walk, going back to the hostel where you get to look at the map. So there we are. We've lived our first life, day one on that journey towards paradise. We get to the hostel and we have a good look at the map, remembering that the map was wiped from our memory. And as we look at that map, we think, I seem to have strayed quite far from the ideal path that I was planning to take. I do wonder, would I have got to my destination quicker if I had taken this route? So, after the opportunity, we could call it one life, we could call it hundreds of lives in pursuit of happiness in stage one. We get to a point where we feel that we've experienced so many lives of self indulgence and brushing aside everyone who ever tried to stand in our way that gradually, perhaps, we come up with the unchangeable law of the universe, the law of cause and effect. Now, whatever we have done, whatever we've experienced it, and the people that we've experienced it with would have affected others, hopefully, many in a positive way. There will be others that, because of what we've done, it's affected people in a negative way. Perhaps it has created negative energy, and perhaps this has closed round us like a fog, becoming denser and denser and denser until it reaches a point where some of it has to be neutralized. Because each time we go back to that hostel, that place I call heaven, the starting place, we are aware of this karma, this fog, this denseness which is building up. So perhaps after one life, perhaps after hundreds of lives in phase one, we start to suffer a series of setbacks and problems. As we get to those experiences, we start to think about the lessons that we have been taught, the lessons that we have learnt. We start to think about the lessons that we need to learn, not necessarily want to learn. And I do think there's a thin line, but clear difference between the experiences we want and the experiences we need. Each of those experiences in which we receive the same treatment, perhaps, that we have inflicted on others, perhaps that will neutralize another bit of that negative energy that is built around us. And I say for me, it's cause and effect. So for positive and negative, if you've been giving out that unconditional love and you've been affecting people in a positive way, perhaps you want to know what it is to feel like to be on the receiving end of that. Perhaps if you did an awful lot of receiving and taking and not as much giving, you want to go back and you decide that you need to experience it in another way. So, Nicola, you asked a good question here. Ashley, do we plan our life before we come here, but also have the opportunity to change our map once we're here? Yes, I think that what I'm saying is that I believe that we are to a largely point the architects of our life. We choose the blockbuster video, we choose the things we want to experience, or perhaps in stage two, the things we need to experience, and we are therefore planning a likely path for us. We have the opportunity to change our map once we're here because that memory is wiped. We have no prior knowledge of any previous incarnations, and we cannot remember all of the planning we've done in most of the occasions. And of course, not only do we have free will and the opportunity to change the routes or the map, but everyone around us has free will and not necessarily plays to the same set of rules. So, great question, Nicola. Thank you for that. I said there were four stages. And as I said, the four stages could represent first 4 days of our journey on the map. It could represent our first four incarnations. It could represent hundreds or even thousands of incarnations in those stages. But if we now think about the third stage, for those of you that listened to the first show, you remember that was saying that on our journey, where we've got our map and we decided where to go, I mentioned stall holders, people selling and flogging things on the way, claiming to help us on our journey, perhaps some shiny things. Or perhaps in this third stage of reincarnating, we start to pay a little more attention as we start to pay big attention to all these little shops and marketplace stalls along the way. Because as we pass along the way and we hear the interpretation from them about the best way to go forward, we start to think about some of the maps that they claim they can draw, or some of the maps that they're starting to sell. So, for the next incarnation, and it might be as little as the third incarnation, Likely, I would think probably hundreds, certainly dozens. Ralph used to say to me, Ralph Steadman, more likely thousands. But in that third stage, the next few lives, certainly the next incarnation, will be a life where we start to believe there must be some bigger picture, some reason why the whole of the human condition is as it is. And you start to wonder more about the overall purpose. You start to question things as if there is one. So we become attracted to these people at the side of the road on our journeys. We start to think about the stalls, and perhaps we wander off down little alleyways and we look for these undiscovered stalls. And as we pass them, perhaps these stalls are representing the various belief systems of what we might describe or refer to as religions, perhaps political movements, cults, and isms, all the different various degrees of intensity. Now, all of these little stalls on our journey claiming to do something, I believe that in that third stage, we start to become even more attracted. We start to listen. All of them are proclaiming, of course, that they know the truth, the one truth. Follow me, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, follow me. I know the truth. I know where we're going. And of course, theirs is the only way that you will find paradise. Follow them and follow their truths is the way you will get to paradise. Sometimes we'll start to think, I like the sound of that. That sounds right. Other times we might start to argue with them. We might even start to argue with other travelers. Perhaps if we're really fond of something we heard, we may even get to the point of agreeing with them and then saying, well, in my opinion, my religion or my party or my ism or my cult has all the answers, so yours must be wrong. In fact, sometimes feelings grow so high, perhaps, in this third stage of reincarnations, that we may even come to blows over the issues we so passionately believe are true, not realizing, of course, that we could be hurting other people and that we might not have all of the bits of the jigsaw that show us that true picture. For any purpose, we could be, in fact, hurting ourselves, and we might even be attracting more negative energy. So before I go on to the fourth stage, I'm just going to take a question here from Nicole. Nicole says, could an awful childhood be some type of karmic response from the universe to do with reincarnation? Nicole, I believe it could be. And I believe that to a certain extent, we may even choose. So when we talk about response from the universe, this idea being that we're sort of catapulted towards it often sits easier with me as a human being, because as a human being, I can't understand why I'd ever be in a position where I would choose an experience that is anything other than positive and great. Why would I want a difficult or even an awful childhood? I personally, as Ashley Robinson, struggle with that and have to sort of really sit back, meditate, believe in something greater than myself, surrender to my guides and say, help me understand a little bit more about this. And it goes back to that point that my higher self is in a position without this 3D body and this human brain, and it's unable, therefore, to process things and emotions in the same way. But yes, an awful childhood potentially could be some type of karma or negative energy that you have chose to experience. Equally, it could be down to the free will of other people around you who have taken your destiny by hostage, they've ransacked it, and they're now taking you in a direction that you had never planned for. You rent the video from Blockbuster, it's in the box, but when you start playing it and you play that life, you realize that no one else was playing their part. They'd all used their own free will, and perhaps they started to make awful decisions. And therefore, your element of destiny perhaps is pulling you off the path you had chosen. So, good question, Nicole. Thank you. The fourth stage, then, of reincarnation. And for me, as I said, fourth stage now could be life number 4, incarnation number 4. Potentially, it represents the fact that you've done now hundreds, if not thousands, of incarnations. You might start to discover new things in that rucksack. Remember, we spoke about that bag you have with you in life. We spoke about the fact that you have everything you need in that bag to circumvent, to overcome, to adapt any of those barriers on your path. You want to climb the mountain because you're going to get there quicker. You've got everything you need in the bag. You've got the rope. Someone else you've chose to walk with has the grappling hook. But you're well trained, you're well equipped, you're well guided. But you start to have a deeper rummage in this bag and you discover a mobile phone, a fully charged, ready to go smartphone, all the latest gadgets, gizmos, and apps, or a walkie talkie, or a sat phone. And as you find this communications device, you realize that you actually have your own personal, direct line to the source of all wisdom and truth. Those people that you meet in that place I call heaven, or the hostel on this journey, those guides, those people that seem to have walked the map and know the journey and give you that advice that you suddenly forget about when you start your journey and you start your incarnation. Now you've found a radio and you can pick up that radio and you can talk to them. And on the other end of the radio is a guide, an inspirer, someone who says, I've been here the whole time, Ash. I was just waiting for you to pick up the phone. Now, for however many incarnations you've had before that, we had the knowledge of knowing that we did have a direct connection to the truth with this phone via our own higher self and through our own personal guide. So in stage 4, we start to realize we have to face the task of neutralizing all of the remaining negative energies, the fog, the things that we're not happy with. You might be carrying on into the fourth life of incarnation. This might be after several hundred or perhaps several thousand incarnations. And of course, each of those lives would have brought with it an interesting level or layer of fog. In doing this, we realize that we're always going to have to get enough help to get us through each of those experiences, each of those situations, and perhaps the more challenging circumstances we're going to encounter because of the experiences we choose to come and incarnate to experience, the more guidance we're going to need, the more strength and encouragement from our friends and inspirers we're going to need. This is the reason while some of the loveliest and most spiritual people on the planet seem to be the beset with problems of all kinds, perhaps, and that you know that religious people say, why does God allow these things to happen? Well, you'd have to watch my first show for me to go into more detail about who or what is God. But in a nutshell, I don't think God is a single individual. I think God is the sum particles of all of that intelligent energy in that place I call the spirit world. Now, Lenny says, but is that not bordering on victim blaming? To a certain extent, Lenny, which is why I say as a human being, I sometimes often have difficulty in understanding that. Most of the truths that I've had kind of downloaded to me through guides, inspirers, and other spiritualists suggest that we are in charge of our own destiny and that perhaps we do choose experiences. But we have to recognize that everyone has free will, and therefore people, and I believe this right now as a spiritualist, we are all responsible for our decisions in this life, in this incarnation. We have to take responsibility for those things. Now, thinking about this fourth stage then, as we're somewhere near the last stage, along with many other perhaps devout members of other religions and other isms and other people, honest, sincere members of society, good functioning people that are helping us, we're starting to think about how we can work together and perhaps how we can help other people. Do they need to experience everything we have in the same way? You can always tell, I've been told, you can always tell who these types of people are. Because if ever the talk comes on to things like, what is life all about? These types of people often sort of, quietly raise their hand up and they'll start to state their case. And you start to accept that your ideas are just as valid as their ideas. However, what we start to know and is that we will never truly know everything while we are incarnating as a human being on earth. We will have to wait to the end of our own personal journeys to get to that point where we start to add it all up and it all starts to make sense. So I think that that story of the life of starting and finishing on different days and different incarnations, it starts to explain our own individual, unique journey as a human being. Each day on that journey, starting at the same place but returning to the hostel each night, starting again exactly from where we left the map, knowing that we're still in pursuit, we're en route to paradise. At the beginning of each day, we plan exactly what we're going to do. And Lenny, I think this answers your question to a certain extent, because if we're planning what we are intending to do each day in each life, and we're choosing the roads that we will take, but that road and our plan is dependent on where we'd already got to the day before or the life before, where we'd got to on that journey. Because each morning we're going to be taken from the hostel back to the exact point that we'd already reached the night before or the life before, or the incarnation before. And I think that means, in terms of reincarnation and incarnation, that we all have the knowledge that we've accumulated in previous lives, but it's built into our subconscious minds. And this is why I said I also believe that past life regression is possible, that it is hidden there within the subconscious. Now, often children, particularly really sensitive children who have just come from that place I call heaven, will have interesting conversations and experiences. Perhaps they are remembering something of their past lives. However, in the process of growing up and having new experiences in that incarnation, most of them, most of us, forget. We simply don't remember. And our previous lives are no longer relevant to us. We don't remember the map we had memorized before we started and set out on that life. The most important thing to understand about that, I believe, and Ralph used to say, is before each day's journey, what we can see when we've reached on the map. It's about that review. It's about looking at how far we'd gone, how far we'd wandered off that beaten track from what we had planned to do. And of course, that focuses perhaps in the next incarnation about what we're going to do next. What are we going to plan and how are we going to do it in the next day? So before we start our human life, I do believe that in the vast majority of occasions, for the vast majority of circumstances, we've already decided what lessons we want to learn in that incarnation. And I do believe that most occasions we have chosen the environment that will give us the experiences to bring about those lessons. So that means I'm saying that we've already chosen this life, and we cannot blame anyone else for the conditions that we are undergoing, experiencing. But again, I've admitted that as Ashley Robinson, I find it hard to believe while I would choose a difficult or challenging life. Now, in most cases, so do we remember the people that we travel with along that journey? I think that this, for me, explains soul attraction, instinct about good people and bad people. If we had a particularly difficult life or difficult incarnation or day on that journey, that person has wound us up and irritated us. Perhaps there's a little bit of the subconscious reminding you that that person used to irritate you. And then we might keep our distance from those people. Usually this is not strong enough feeling to be noticed, but occasionally people have spoke about dramatic flashbacks to previous lives or previous experiences in which they relive that event in a previous life without the people who are with them at the time. There's a lovely saying, birds of a feather flock together. And we often see this happening, I believe, in our own lives. So when in the company of those people of like mind, the people that we feel completely at ease with, and when this is really pronounced, it is almost certain, I believe, that we've been together before as a group. Some people refer to this as soul groups, not necessarily in the same relationships, but others in equally harmonious. And it goes back to one of the questions we had about perhaps waiting for partners. So perhaps you were brother and sister, and in the next life, you're mum and dad, or your husband and wife, your next door neighbours. I think to a certain extent, our soul is genderless. And perhaps that explains why it's easy for people to fall in love with people regardless of their biological sex. But when we try to distance ourselves from others in our life, we are perhaps reliving those unhappy connections we'd had with them in a past life. And while this is strange to relate, the reason we've been brought together in this life, perhaps, is to try and put right which once went wrong. It reminds me of Dr. Sam Beckett in Quantum Leap. It's another example of the fact that there are no problems in life, only opportunities. Now, Medley says she agrees. However, some incarnations ask for these experiences, as hard as that is to believe. Yes, yeah, absolutely, Medley. And of course, if you watch an interview with Stephen Fry, who talks about they're obviously not being a god, he'd say, well, I'd have some questions. Things like child cancer. Why would that be experience that anyone would want to go through? And as Ashley Robinson, I don't have the answers for that. But for me, at a spiritual level, it makes sense that I have chosen the experiences, certainly the vast majority of the experiences. It's going to make sense. And although I do find it hard to understand as a human being, I know that in terms of any real difficult, like really difficult time in my life, any real difficult hurts where you've been hard done by, one of the first things you have to do in order to get over that is to accept what's happened. And then one of the hardest things to do after that is to forgive the person. But truly, when you're able to accept what's happened and you forgive them for the wrongdoing they've done, you start to heal and you start to grow. And I know that from my own personal life in the right now. And when I explained this to Ralph Steadman, I remember him paraphrasing back to me, and he was saying there's a third phase of that, which is thanking the person for the experience. It's like thanking the person that's just wound me up and upset me or really hurt me. He said that is the last phase in truly getting over it and giving it back to the universe. And in many ways, that makes sense. So, I just want to finish by planting a seed about the mysterious people who come into our life and seem to have an inner serenity and wisdom, which can only come from having traveled a path in front of us, perhaps many times before. In human terms, some spiritualists refer to these people as ascended masters, others as guardian angels, archangels, the angel realm, the fairy kingdom, perhaps our, Pegasus and unicorns. And when we are ready to hear their wisdom, we will find that they will appear in our life. And in spiritual terms, you've heard this phrase, when the pupil is ready, the master will appear. So Teresa Thatcher says there's no definitive proof of that, but I respect your opinion. Thank you, Teresa, and I respect you hugely as well. And as I say, I'm giving an opinion based on the caveat that it's only mine, based on the conversations that I've had. But I try and take a daily advancement with my own spiritualist philosophy every day. So when we become fairly advanced on our journey, when we find our spiritual mobile phone at the bottom of our bag, in human terms, this means we realize that we have the power of contacting our higher self, our guides, our inspirers, to ask for help in difficult situations. And we did an entire show dedicated to the concepts of guides. So have a look out for that one if you want to go back. So many people do not realize this. After all, if you can't know that you even have a higher self, you are never likely to try and ask for assistance, are you? But once we know that we have the support, then life becomes far easier, or at least, if not easier, being accepted to study math. Sorry, if not easier, we realize why things are coming into our life might be the same way they are, and we can get that spiritualist advice. So recognizing that the phone is there, recognizing that the bag is there, that we have the phone, so that if we have that support, life can become far easier. Or at least, if not easier, we realize why things are coming into our life, why those experiences are there. Jade Marie says, do you believe we are here for a particular reason? A quest as such. Sometimes I wonder if I'm here for more for others and not myself. Great question, Jade Marie. And I do believe that, yeah. I mean, I've just sort of summed it up by thinking that we are the architects of this. We've signed up for this quest or these experiences. Yes. And I think that in other times, why wouldn't we do it? In the same way, Jade, I know you've done this for your friends, and hopefully we've been there for each other over the years. if you would do those things as human beings for each other, and it could be a deeply spiritual thing, it could be helping someone for a difficult time, it could be helping them move house. If you would do that as a human being, why wouldn't you do it in the spirit world? So if someone said, actually, I want to go back and I've decided that I really need to experience that and it's going to be difficult and it's going to be challenging, will you come back with me? Will you be there for me? Then, yeah, I think that we can be there for others. Some people talk about the concept of angels walking on earth amongst us. What I do know is that towards the end of our journey, towards the end of those many reincarnations, the road ahead of us towards paradise is very likely to become steeper. And perhaps you're going to start to snake backwards and forwards as the party went higher up into that mountain. I spoke about the shortcuts. I spoke about recognizing we have everything we need to carry on. And so, if it is in our human life, we have this concept of incarnation, of this day's journey ahead of us. As human beings, we often leave the tough tasks that we have to do towards the end of a series jobs. Now, this isn't always the case of everyone, being honest. It's a sort of way that I plan my physical 24 hours a day. I'll do all the quick wins now, going to make the immediate impact, and I'll leave the tougher jobs towards the end of the day or the end of the week or the end of the month. I think that perhaps it's possible in incarnation and the series of incarnations, we leave some of those tougher experiences towards the end, like a series of jobs, so that it's our succession of lives. In fact, as we near the end of that journey, perhaps we start to feel the buzz and we are empowered to take on the most difficult tasks and difficult challenges of our incarnations. Perhaps we've been building up for this, preparing, training. All those things lay beyond us. Perhaps it links to things like physical or even mental illness. I don't know as Ashley Robinson, but I do know that from the inspiration I've had from guides and other bits and pieces, perhaps it's possible that you choose those experiences at a later stage, certainly this fourth phase. But of course, I do believe that everyone will arrive at that promised land, that land of milk and honey, paradise, which we are all subconsciously seeking. And perhaps some of us will do that with one incarnation on earth. Perhaps some of us will do this after tens of thousands. I know that as we find it, not only will it be as good as we expected, it will be better. It will be everything we need it to be. The fact is, it's going to be far better than we could ever have imagined paradise would be. And it's only then that we can truly leave this earthly series of 3D lives, that wheel of rebirth behind, and begin our own personal journey through the spiritual dimensions. For another show, we'll talk about my limited understanding of potential spiritualist dimensions. But I've really enjoyed taking you through what I think are the four fundamental phases of reincarnation. So Siobhan says, I believe you can develop a skill not to react to a person who hurt you in a past life, but it does not mean that you forgive them even if they have passed. True. And Siobhan, thank you for sharing. And Richard, did you just flash up another comment from Teresa? Did I misread something she had said? Okay. Oh, well, sorry, Teresa. I misunderstood that. So, with everything that's going on, firstly, I'm not a strong multitasker. And secondly, I'm only really seeing a handful of things that are coming in. But, folks, okay, we're going to take now more of the questions. We've got about another 15 minutes of questions and some adverts. But I've loved answering your questions as we've gone along so far. And I look forward to taking a few more. So Gal says, so do you consider deja vu as a psychic or reincarnation or foresight? Oh, really good question. And again, I love blending my spiritual philosophy with my love of Hollywood. But if you think about Matrix talking about deja vu being something which has already happened, let me take you back to me renting that DVD or video from Blockbuster. Perhaps you thought, oh, before I rent that film, take on that life, I'm going to watch the trailer. I'm going to see the very quick summary or synopsis of the film. Perhaps deja vu is almost like you remembering bits of the trailer you saw of that life. Perhaps it is just a glimpse in your brain where it takes a few seconds to comprehend. But I do think it could be all of those things. So I know I've sort of answered it by saying it could be all of them. I think I like to believe it's me remembering the trailer of my life and the experience that I was hoping for. That explains to me deja vu in significant moments, which helps me understand the significance of those moments. But yeah, not always necessarily true. Thanks, Gal. Good question. Tony says, if we haven't received a message from a loved one, is it possible they choose to be reincarnated? Well, great question, Tony. And I don't know if that's your Facebook profile picture. That's you, but yeah, you're looking pretty fit and strong there, my friend. Very, very good picture. Someone that's trying to develop and change my body. I've always thought I've got the body of a god, but the body of God at the moment would be that's representative of Buddha. So I've got some work to do. But great question, Tony. And I've got the producer laughing in my ear now. It's nice to make him laugh from time to time. So yes, I think that it is possible. So as a medium, I spoke about giving that evidence of the personality. Perhaps they've decided to incarnate straight away. Perhaps they're not in that point where they've worked out how to use that walkie-talkie. Now, we spoke about the walkie-talkie in the bag. I think a lot of it depends on the circumstances in which they die. If they lived an entire life believing it was impossible to communicate with people once they'd died, or that there was no life after life, psychologically, a lot of that's going to affect their personality. Just because they reach heaven doesn't mean they suddenly evolve to an ascended master. So perhaps they've got to understand there is a life after life, and then they've got to work out how to communicate, how to use the radio, how to contact a medium, how to make sure that the person they want to contact with is going to be near a medium that's going to understand, or that a person needs to pick up their walkie-talkie. But yeah, I do think that one of the things is it's possible that they choose to reincarnate, or if we think about the phases, maybe they did so many goes of incarnation that they wanted a bit of peace and quiet and rest once they get to that place I call heaven. So yeah, great question, Tony. Thank you. Julie says, do you think animals reincarnate? I do, Julie, and probably an entire show we could dedicate to the concepts of this. But I think that by the time we incarnate as a human being, the energy required as part of that soul, that personality, perhaps that energy is in itself energy from other experiences. Now, I'm not a great science teacher, but we know that everything's made of atoms, right? And smaller things, you know, a rock will have less atoms in it than a human being. Well, if we take the animal kingdom in between, animals will be made up of less atoms and particles of energy than a human being. Is it possible that, you know, for want of a better words, and I don't do great science explanation, but several cats and some rocks and some flowers and all the other intelligent bits of energy that form atoms and particles come together to help form part of that personality. So yeah, I think a cat could come back as a cat, maybe a bird comes back as a cat, and then a cat comes back as a bird to redo their own negative karma. I think all of that is potentially possible. Amy says, do you see spirits in their human form, as some say they do? Again, a great question, Amy. The vast majority of the time, I see spirit in my mind's eye, which is, you know, the same place you sort of store your shopping list. And if I say to you, Amy, what were you eating last Wednesday? You kind of go to your memory. Spirits generally start to introduce themselves in that mind's eye. But I have physically seen spirits with my own eyes in the same way that I've heard spirits. And almost every time that I've seen them, either with my eyes or in my mind's eye, it's in a form that they were most comfortable with, in a form where they last identified. And yes, that's been human. Sometimes, if they lived a good old age, they come back and they show themselves at a much younger age or a more healthy stage of their life. And certainly it's from the personality of the body that they last incarnated, so that the person receiving the messages understands who they are. But yeah, nice question, Amy. Okay, I'll bring on the next one. Lauren says, Ash, do you know much about visitation dreams? I've had 2 in the past 2 weeks with the same person. They are so real, and it's as if they know me. They don't have much time with me. I don't. I'm a very novice in everything, Lauren. Richard, there was a lady that did some dream interpretations on the show, and I think they're available in the library in the archives. Can you remind me of her name? I remember the name. It's a young lady that is a qualified sort of dream interpretation. And if you, it's always a good idea to go through the libraries. Leanne, perhaps, have a look through the archives, and there's some really good stuff online. I do think that in our sleep state, it's very easy for spirit communicators to influence us. And I think that I've had plenty of evidence from from people's ancestors that said, you were very quiet and closed. Your mind's eye was more appetite to this because you were resting. I was able to come in and influence you. We've heard from spirit guides about us teaching us in our sort of dreams. And yeah, without a doubt, even me as a medium, I've had some great conversations with my nan, who now lives in that place I call heaven. And yeah, it does feel really real. And sometimes I think it's just to let you know that they're still around and they love you, or they felt the love that you still have for them. Sometimes it's you've asked for a bit of help and a bit of guidance, and they're trying to give you that steer. Sometimes it's just that they're trying to plant a nice memory. So I think that yeah, if they know you and you feel that, then that's very likely exactly what's going on. But do a little bit more research. There's some great websites that do dream interpretation as well, and I think that it is possible for spirit communicators to come and influence us in that dream state. Thanks, Lauren. Lorraine Hewitt is the name of the wonderful lady that did all the dream interpretation stuff. So you'll find her on the YouTube and Facebook sort of playlists and archives. Have a look at some of that. Thanks, Lauren. I'll do a few more questions. Samantha Lawrence says, "Life's so full of experiences, emotions, struggles that can truly humble you, truly learn forgiveness and growth." Yeah, absolutely, Samantha. I agree with that. Nice statement. Thank you. Natasha says, "Free Will, The Majesty of Life, a book you just started reading. Sounds like a good recommendation, folks." Thanks, Natasha. Julie Caswell, "I think if there is reincarnation, that we live multiple lives at once and are learning in them all at once, but still do loads of learning spirit as well." Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to atoms, the one thing I do remember from science at school was that an atom, which we used to think was the smallest thing that you could break energy down to, and obviously we now know that an atom in itself has particles. What we do know is that both atoms and particles can appear in two different places at exactly the same time and can be in constant communication with each other. So if we know that about atoms and particles at a science level, then yeah, I think it's absolutely possible that we're living multiple lives at once. And of course, I mentioned earlier on that I think God is the sum particle of all the energy. So perhaps we're all part of that great divine, that force, and therefore we are all connected, and we're all experiencing everything at the same time at different times. And all of our individual personalities are all part of that divine force or that divine energy, the spirit world, or in Star Wars, the Force. So may the Force be with you, Julie. Tony said, "I've heard there are two groups of spirits, one group visiting Earth and one group waiting to visit Earth." Yeah, I've heard something similar, Tony. And Brigitte Visser, who's been on the show many times, posted a wonderful video about what she called Earth as the training planet. And there's this wonderful video of these two little girls, I think you can find it on YouTube, that are talking telepathically as if they're in heaven. And it's talking about the fact of, why would you go down and visit Earth? And you're like, well, I have to go. I've got friends and family down there, and they need some help and they need some experience. And I think it was a lovely way of explaining it. So yeah, nice little thought. And I think that, spirit, for me, I've said, I think spirit, soul, consciousness, personality, I think they're all sort of descriptions to describe that collective intelligence energy. Thanks, Tony. Brilliant. I think I've answered all of the questions that have come in tonight. Really love talking about it. It's actually gone really quick again tonight. I do hope you've enjoyed the show this evening. If you have, please let us know. Less enthusiastic, let's say, if you haven't, let us know. But of course, I mean that. If you haven't, tell us what we could do differently or do better next time. For those of you on Facebook, do head over to SPTV fan page. Fantastic community we're building on and off air. both in the YouTube live chat to the community over there. Do consider becoming a very important patron, a VIP of SPTV. Our objective is to continue to bring spiritual people together, and we want to keep this channel and this content free. So if you are able to donate, please do consider doing that. Lots of people start to say thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to give you a couple of heads up about a few bits and pieces going on. Thank you, Julie and Terry, and a few others. So I know that tonight is Friday night, 23rd, my wedding anniversary. Tomorrow night's on Spiritual Psychic TV at 8 o'clock. You'll have a demonstration of mediumship. So do make sure you bookmark that. Every Saturday night from 8 p.m. you've got a demonstration of mediumship. We'll have a different reader for you, a different medium every single night. All of the people working on this channel have to a certain extent been vetted and tested, and you are likely to get some wonderful evidence of life after death. Who is working tomorrow night, Richard? It'll be a wonderful medium. That'll be with you tomorrow night, and no doubt later on YouTube or on SPTV you'll see the name of that medium. But guaranteed, that's free readings for people looking for readings as well. So tomorrow night from 8 p.m. on Spiritual Psychic TV, a demonstration of mediumship. Chris Shearer is the lovely medium for us tomorrow night, both live on YouTube and Facebook. And Sunday morning, I invite you to join us at a divine service with my home church, Wimbledon Spiritualist Church, also taking into account our sister church at Hatbridge. Every Sunday morning from 11 a.m., my mum and dad, Ray and Jackie Robinson, some of the reverends there. You've had Leslie Knight on the telly tonight, Rose Anderson, also reverends and ministers of religion at Wimbledon. You'll have a wonderful Sunday morning service with readings. There will be an address by the medium and a demonstration of spiritualist, usually clairvoyance. So a wonderful thing, 11 till 12:15 every Sunday from 11 a.m. live streamed from Women's Spiritualist Church. And later that afternoon, join the ladies on the Sunday sofa. That's Sunday afternoons from 2 p.m. on Spiritual Psychic TV. Free readings, a bit of a chat, some fun, love, light, and laughter from those ladies. Every 2 weeks, Sunday afternoons from 2 p.m. And that, folks, in a nutshell, is a couple of heads up. Do remember to subscribe to the channel. Make sure you get notifications of when we're going live. If you want to find me on Facebook and Instagram at Ash Robinson Medium, it'd be lovely to see you on that channel too. And of course, the SPTV fan page. Some really great conversations and chats going on there. But thank you, and lovely to have some of you tonight. Lovely to see some of your comments there. People saying they've had a lovely night or a lovely show. And of course, thank you to Richard James, our wonderful producer. Diane says she's thoroughly enjoyed it tonight. I've not seen you since the Psychic Weekend in Coostoke, the Western Supermare. Hi, Diane. Good to hear from you today. We've kicked them off again. Got a lovely one coming up in August, and a beautiful partnership with SPTV for March next year down in Bournemouth. Kim Bryan says lovely evening too. Hiya, Kim, and thank you, folks, for all the love and comments. Terry, is that flowers for the anniversary? Thank you very much. I probably should have thought about flowers for Claire. That would have been a good idea, wouldn't it? Kelly McKeaton, lovely show. Thank you, Kelly. And I'll probably leave it at that, folks. What do you say? She buy me some flowers. My kids are amazing. They're only 6 and 3. They managed to buy some flowers from the petrol station. Luckily enough, I think they're with my mum and dad to pay for them. But always grateful for some flowers, folks. Do stay safe. Tonight you've had a chat about reincarnation, and I've been Ashley Robinson. This has been Being Spiritual. Good night. God bless. Stay safe.